Planet magazine.
Also known as Wednesday 13.
Welcome to Brutal Planet magazine.
Welcome to Brutal Planet magazine.
All comfortable, but you're welcome to Brutal Planet magazine.
You're listening to Brutal Planet.
Hey, what's up, everybody? CJ Pierce here from Toronto Pool, and you listen to Brutal Planet Media right here. Get yourself.
Hey, I'm Steve from Within the Ruins, and this is Brutal Planet.
Greetings, Brutal Planet. We're live today with Mr. Scott McDonald from the band Melted Bodies. How are you, Scott?
Good. My beard's not nearly as big as a lot of those beards in the intro, but maybe I'll get there.
Well, you know, those guys took a lot of time curating those beards. We specifically choose our intro pieces based on the size of the beard.
Yeah, I feel like they got progressively longer.
We're like evolving to the point where we eventually get ZZ Top in there, basically.
Oh, God, I can't wait.
Yeah, we're probably gonna change that out. We just had a lot of like the guy from Drowning Pool was super cool, and my cousin who runs this with me, he's in Sweden all the time. So like 90% of those guys are Swedes out in the, you know, with herding goats out in the fjords or whatever.
Right.
So let's talk about the band, man. I admittedly just heard about you guys, and from what I read, you were like primed to go, and then COVID hit. So I guess walk me through like a little bit of the origin story of the band, so people kind of know where you guys are coming from and what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like nobody was safe from that whole world event. I feel like a lot of people pivoted better than others. And yeah, we definitely took a hit about with regard to like what we had planned and what was upcoming, but we really embraced the digital version of ourselves to kind of, I don't know, I don't want to use the term capitalize, but make the most of the situation at that point. But yeah, so I guess a little background on us. We formed almost 10 years ago. It was Andy, our lead singer and main writer. He put together some demos, and he had been previously in another band in a very different genre called
Local Natives, right?
Yeah, Local Natives. So he was looking to scratch a much different itch at that point. And him and I had kind of just started hanging out and going to events around Los Angeles, you know, mutual interest in horror and Japanese anime and stuff like that. And so we had gone out to some, God, what was it called? I think it was called, or the English translation was "Why Don't You Play in Hell?" Some like Japanese flick. And so we went to go see that, and we were kind of just like loitering afterwards. And he was talking about what he had, you know, cooking. And so he asked me to like play drums for him. And I had not played drums in a band for a while, and I had never played drums in a band for strictly metal, for metal music. And so I was like, what are we talking about here? You know, I need to work on my blast beats. And then once I heard the demos, I was like, oh, this is not what I thought at all. That first one being from our first record, Enjoy Yourself. It was, I think the first thing I heard was like the demo for Eat Cops. And I immediately heard all of like the influences and inspirations that we had discussed, that, you know, they were all there right in the DNA of the music. And so, yeah, we realized that jamming together was fun and all, but we should like do something with this. And so we did some initial tryouts for bass, and it was just very clear that when Hoda stepped in, that she was the one. You know, we didn't even have to think twice about that. And so initially a 3-piece where we got some supplemental help from some friends, like doing some synth stuff occasionally, and then we got booked by our current keyboardist Ben. I say current, like we have a changing roster. Our lovely friend and brother Ben, he booked us for some like DIY, like electronic music focused gig, and we realized that this should be the dude filling out, our keys, and that opened up like the writing a lot more too, because there was elements of that, but we realized that we could just go, we could fully lean in on all the different textures and instrumentation outside of typical analog instruments. And yeah, took us too long to put together the record, but we all have day jobs. I mean, we all actually have like full-blown careers, so which is nice that we all have that understanding of long weeks and trying to squeeze in rehearsal and writing and touring and all that stuff when we can. And so, yeah, we were about to put out the record, and then we put out the record, and then the pandemic hit, and all these things that we had lined up, booked, went away. And I actually have my timeline around. We put out our EP, and then the pandemic hit. And so, yeah, we did like a live album. We did like a live stream, and we partnered with this rad art gallery called Super Chief. And so we partnered with them to put out this like live stream, and it was weird. It was kind of, the idea was like Melted Bodies TV, MBTV. And yeah, I mean, I want to say that we got the most out of that situation that we possibly could. There's a different Melted Bodies on a different timeline with no world pandemic, maybe doing things differently. But yeah, and so we put that out, and then immediately wanted to, given how long it took us to crystallize the sound initially, with this next record, Inevitable Fork, we kind of wanted to just get more of it out into the world as it was made. Maybe ignore some of the traditional models for release and just do what we wanted, chapterize it, be able to like collaborate with different people. And yeah, we're excited to finally be birthing this big baby.
So one of the things that kind of drew me to you guys initially is the sound is more in the realm of like a System of a Down or a Mr. Bungle. There's a lot of dynamic shifts, and it's not like, I feel like a lot of metal today kind of stays within a certain amount of boundaries, and you guys are definitely all over the place. Talk about, I guess, like your history as a musician. You said you didn't play, but what's your background prior to this project?
I had kind of just like jammed around doing just a variety of different genres. But the most committed I ever was like the heyday of like hardcore and air quotes screamo. So that's where I really invested my most time at that point. And given how, I don't know, that genre kind of, I mean, I know it's having a resurgence now, but it fizzled out the way it did. And my personal experience of being in a band, I was like, cool, I don't want to do that again. But I did play around a lot with like friends, and honestly, just everything, psych rock, just other experimental stuff, noise. And so, yeah, with our myriad influences, there's no real science behind how they come together. I mean, we all just have incredibly eclectic tastes, so that's the easiest way to put it. We all listen to so many things, and it helps that, for instance, Andy, who takes the lead on writing, I mean, maybe that's the better way to address it. He'll come to us with a demo, and we'll hear different things in it that speak to us. And so when we go through the process of refining it with our own points of view, given that foundation, we can lean into some of those parts more than others. And, some of us with certain genres can speak to things in a little bit of like an encyclopedic manner. So it's just kind of fun to point to those cues and lean in and explore them even more. The System of a Down, excuse me, the System of a Down, Mr. Bungle thing, like I probably was the biggest fan of System of a Down growing up. But none of my love for them has been really thoughtfully injected as a influence into the music at all.
Sure.
Neither is Mr. Bungle, quite honestly. I think that's just kind of happenstance that our eclectic influences kind of just coalesced into whatever that is. But yeah, like we all love death metal. We all love a variety of electronic music. And then just some of like the no wave, new wave punk, like Talking Heads and Devo were, I would say, like established solid points of reference that we wanted to look to. And we didn't realize that that would sort of just turn into System of a Down for some people, or Mr. Bungle for others, or
I would also preface that by saying that's my frame of reference. And when as I was listening to the record, I was like, the System of a Down comparison for me, I think is just because of the vocals at some part. He does, and you could argue that Surge was probably influenced by Talking Heads and some of those bands you mentioned. And then the Mr. Bungle thing, I think for me, it's just like the record is challenging in comparison to other music, where it's like a band like Mr. Bungle, you really have to like maybe think about it or like take it all in, because there's so much going on, you know. And I think that's kind of the frame of reference. Not that you guys sound like either of those bands.
Yeah, that's totally fair, and we get that. And it's also, you know, it's also nice to just hear how that you know, how you're hearing it from your point of view and the context behind it. I get that. Yeah, he's got some of that inflection in his voice, but yeah, I would, the more I've gone back since we've like put out music and had that reaction, like the more I've gone back, I see a little bit more of like, well, yeah, what Surge might have been influenced by as I like dive back with discography and stuff. So yeah,
totally. I heard Dead Kennedys in his voice, like when I first heard System too. So
yeah, we've definitely gotten that one. I mean, and all of these are rad comparisons. We're not upset at all. It's just the nature of comparisons is.
Yeah. Everybody has a frame of reference. For me too, I want to be able to describe your sound to our audience, since we're not like playing your music or anything, so they can kind of get an idea. Because I had never heard of you guys until, you know, I got the promo for your record. So
awesome. And where is BPM based?
So until recently, I was in Agora Hills.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And I just moved out to Albuquerque, New Mexico at the end of but my son who comes on a lot with me is still based in Oak Park, like in the same area.
Nice.
And you know, I don't know how long I'm going to be out here. I really am starting to like it here quite a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, initially founded in LA, but we have people all over. We have a guy in Minnesota. My cousin Eric is up in Salt Lake, and my son's still in LA. So
nice. I just went to Albuquerque for the very first time last month for actually Ben's wedding. He got married out in that area, and beautiful place. I can see why you like it.
It's definitely a vibe, man. I will say this, like it has first of all, I'm blown away by how many dispensaries there are here. There's way more than like there's one on every corner, but it's got like it's obviously way less people, like a little less crowded than LA, but it has kind of like this like a little bit of a Wild West vibe to it.
Sure.
Kind of like a libertarian type.
Yeah, you can pick up a little bit of that for sure.
Yeah, but it's a cool place. I'm really growing to enjoy it here. But of course, I miss LA. I lived there for 25 years, and
yeah,
it's one of my favorite.
It's an easy place to miss for as much as a lot of people don't want to admit it. I love LA.
Yeah, I mean, I drove rideshare for a while too, and it's like LA gets such a bad rap because of Hollywood, you know, but it's such a diverse, massive place with so many different cultural like influences coming together. So
yeah, it's a bunch of towns that grew into one another and just became like this big nebulous beast, and people try to say it has one core identity, and it does not.
Yeah, totally does not. So what do you guys have? The record comes out, what is it, next week or this week, right? Friday?
Holy shit. I'm sorry.
Hold on.
Yeah.
I got the date.
Yeah, it comes
October
out
18th.
Yeah.
So it's this Friday.
Yeah. Forgot what time was, and yes, it is release week.
Yeah, I should look at my notes too a little before I ask a question. So what are you guys doing on the build up? Do you guys have new singles coming out? Do you have a tour once it hits? What kind of stuff are you doing to promote the record?
Yeah, we had two singles come out, both with their own respective music videos. We had Bloodlines come out. When was that? In August, and then we had Something Is Wrong come out last month, and yeah, and for the ramp up, we have a fun little we have a release show planned that I don't want to give too many details away about it, but it's an idea that we've been playing with for quite some time. We're very excited to finally go for it. We'll have a fun partner with it, and it definitely plays with format. Anybody can just like do a release show and play all the tracks, and then it becomes just like another footnote in all of the live show experiences. But we wanted to do something a little bit more special, given that it's our party. So yeah, we're cooking up something really fun that we plan to announce very soon. It'll be a little bit after the release of the record, just to give people a moment to digest everything, which kind of feels better. So they have a little bit more of a relationship with it, and we can all enjoy it together.
Yeah, I'm excited to eventually, hopefully, see you guys live too. Because listening to music like this, I'm like, wow, it's got to be so killer to see it performed live.
There's a lot of components to it, and the more we get established, the more we're able to play venues that have the the production capabilities to really make it sing. But we have done very well just trying to do distill all of these sounds and make them work for more like DIY settings, which tend to be the most fun. The kids, they go hard. It's great. It's great seeing all the limbs flying around, and sometimes members of our band just completely get lit up and taken down from the crowd moshing and stuff, which is it's great. But yeah, I would say that whenever we play a live show, it's sort of it's almost always some sort of like bespoke version of what the recorded music is. We try to make it a unique experience from one another.
You're not just playing the song format. You guys are kind of maybe doing a little bit of improvisation. Maybe.
New textures, new sounds, a different approach. Maybe this instrument plays that part, just to like really, keeping in mind of what the energy is live, and having those components like be the strongest that they can be and the most translatable. You don't want to just, we have so many layers. We don't want to have just like a million tracks playing. We want to figure out how those things can be done a little bit more organically, and you can see them unfold in front of your eyes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I listened to the singles and then I got the advance of the record, and listening to the actual record, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of like really heavy stuff on here that I didn't expect from hearing the singles.
Well, I'm glad you feel that way. That's good. Yeah. We definitely try to experiment and explore outside of just like the straight chugga chugga, but we also really love that. And so glad to hear that there's enough heavy elements for, given how many Swedish and Nordic men you had
in our intro
show.
Yeah, I'm one who, so we have a lot of dynamics here too. It's like we have the best of all worlds because we have a couple generations. Like I grew up, I was born in the late 70s, 90s was my coming of age, like grunge, all that.
Yeah.
And then we have a guy who's kind of like, he came of age in like the 2000s, like when new metal and like Creed were a thing.
Sure.
And then my cousin Eric's a generation before me, so he grew up in the 80s. He's more into most of it, like the kind of like power metal and the more like European style metal.
Sure.
So we got a wide range of stuff. We'll definitely retool our intro after. I do it every year. So.
Oh, great! Have they listened to it? What are the multi-generational thoughts behind the record?
I don't think they've listened to it yet. I mean, I literally just reached out to Austin the other day after listening to some of the demos. So
Nice.
and this is more my wheelhouse too. I like challenging music.
Mm-hmm.
I know like Joey, for example, he's definitely into like more of the like kind of mainstream rock, like Godsmack and that kind of thing. that
Gotcha.
really isn't. I mean, I don't hate those guys or anything, but it's not really something that I'm like, oh yeah, I can't wait to listen to the new Godsmack. You know, I'm
Yeah.
more like, I want something that's gonna melt my face with, or is like throwing me weird curveballs, which is kind of more what you guys are doing.
Yeah, and I appreciate that phrasing. We, for a genre that was started to shock and thrill and have a spirit of experimentation, as time goes on, it feels like there's more and more rigidity behind what metal should be, and
Mhm.
yeah, we like playing with what that idea is and exploring all things heavy because it doesn't just have to be one format. And does that always work out for us? Well, it remains to be seen. I would say that there's been a lot of moments of one step forward, two steps back, and yeah, people just have really crystallized ideas, and we're doing our best to sort of chip away at those a little bit and introduce some newer stuff, even though nothing's new under the sun. These are all very,
Sure.
all the references we have are through the annals of music history. But no, yeah, I'm glad that you want to be challenged a little bit, because it feels like what we're doing, but not just like as our focus. We're not just making music to challenge people.
Right.
Figure we can explore these ideas, and along the way, if it puts you in a different comfort zone, then great. Then we feel like that's a win.
Yeah, and to your point about the rigidity thing, it's like, I know for me, I come from like the 90s. In the 90s, there was kind of like this robust alternative thing that happened, and all of a sudden, like metal bands had to like experiment and do that. Like you couldn't just sound like Van Halen,
Mhm.
And I feel like it's kind of happening again in that like the Meshuggah era hit, and then like all these metal bands are just doing the like off kilter gent thing where
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's always refreshing to hear someone who's like kind of pushing the envelope, so to speak, a little bit, or trying to like, when I read you guys' bio, the opening line says something about Cannibal Corpse and Talking Heads.
Yes.
Or those two, and those are two, and yeah, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I've never heard a metal band throw out Talking Heads as an influence.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I just there was just so much attitude and underrated badassery that came out of some of those acts, like Talking Heads, Devo.
Devo.
Devo was just like I mean, I love the fact that they were just playing with straight punk bands a lot, and they were just like these crazy art school kids just doing whatever the f they wanted. And to me, that was that's one of the more punk rock ideas and approaches you could have. And so why can't that mesh together with these? I mean, you look back through the history of metal, and there's just so many ridiculous acts, and like the stuff that leads more into like the gore of things. It's like, it's just preposterous, but I love it. And so it just feels like a match made in heaven to with any sort of artist, with any of those artists that kind of have that approach of just like putting up their middle finger, so to speak, their proverbial middle finger through their art. Then like, yeah, I just, there's no reason that there should be a delineation between the two, in our opinion. And I feel like we're in really good company nowadays with some of the acts that are putting out some extremely rad records. We definitely appreciate and look up to Blood Incantation and like what they've just done recently, and like other contemporaries like Chat Pile. Like they're putting out rad music, and so it feels ripe to have a little bit of this spirit and approach to our art, because when we initially kind of started it, it did feel like it was impossible to get on a bill that made sense, at least in Los Angeles, in terms of what was excuse me, trending here at the time. But now there's like a little bit more hope, and as we've branched out of the city and done more touring and stuff, we see there's just a lot of people out there that we could potentially be bed buddies with, and we love that. It's very encouraging.
Yeah, the other thing I love about a band like Devo is the subversiveness of just their lyrical content too.
Yes, yeah,
that gets passed over by a lot of people.
Exactly. And I feel like we were very keen to embrace that that level of creativity and approach on the first record, but there's been so much external shit going on in the world that for an album that looked after doing an album that was so outwardly looking, it felt right to kind of explore our own like inner thoughts and demons and emotions and stuff given the context of everything happening in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing happens like in isolation, so like everything that we're these personal experiences that we're going through, and that we know we share with plenty of people, if not most people, it's all in the context of through the lens of what's going on in the world and how we experience it and reflect on it.
That's a good segue to my last stock question, which is the name. How did you guys come up with the name? Very metal name.
Yeah, I know. There was Andy came up with it years and years ago. It was the name of, so technically Melted Bodies is like a second iteration of a musical project. So Andy had the moniker A Crusher back in the day and put out an album called Melted Bodies. And he'd even had like a clothing brand that he developed around it. So it was kind of like all of this a sort of little world he was building. And then once he wanted to bring more people into it, the idea was like, do we just make Melted Bodies the name? And so that was kind of the working title. And he'll hate me for bringing this up, but there was one point where he said, should we change the name? And it was just a resounding like, hell no, we love it. And it makes sense for kind of like the philosophy behind the music. Because if you ask Andy, and we all agree, it's like, yes, it's brutal. Yes, it's like metal, but it kind of speaks to the lack of limitations we want to put on the creative process, and that it should be a constantly evolving thing. And we're never trying to really do the same thing twice necessarily. So yeah, you could say that the art and the craft is a constantly melting body of work.
I love it. It's just because this is the vibe I kind of got from it. Like I said, it's a very metal name, but it also calls to mind that Salvador Dali melting clocks painting. So it's kind of got like a little surrealist aspect to it,
Yeah, and I would say that we're never shying away from an element of surrealistic experimentation at all. We like challenging in that regard, and we all have our own personal experiences with surreal art and psychedelic events ourselves. So
well, the drumming on the record is killer, man. So I have to ask you, I like to ask people this, especially musicians, what are you listening to right now? Is there anything, because everyone will be like, oh, I'm listening to all kinds of stuff, but is there anything specific right now that you're way into that you could talk about?
Sure. I mean, right now, it's actually the time of year. It's the time of year where I lean into metal most. It's October. I want to have like lyrics about gore and violence because it's just Halloween is on the horizon. I love that. But before this month, I would say throughout the summer I was listening to a lot of Hawaiian music, quite the opposite. A lot of breakbeat and drum and bass I was getting back into. And quite honestly, I was trying to re-explore the Grateful Dead, just because I had kind of like passed over them a little bit too much in life with how much like my dad dug them. And so I was like, I'm going to explore this discography and figure out what the hell this is all about. Because I do think that it is one of, I mean, this is not just my thought. Millions of people think this. It's one of the more iconic bands in existence with some of the best iconography and imagery around them.
Mm-hmm.
So and one of the best names,
Absolutely.
Melted Bodies is just trying to chase the dragon of Grateful Dead. So yeah, that's what I was really doing.
That's awesome. I didn't realize this because my cousin is a huge Deadhead, and he was telling me the other day that most of the Dead songs just started as them kind of like jamming, and it would just like kind of like come into existence. Like they didn't really sit down and write songs.
Oh, you can tell. Maybe that was what was so hard for me initially, but now I have an appreciation for it. Oh, and then in very cliche fashion, I was also, like a lot of people, listening to the Charlie XCX Brad album.
Oh yeah, I'm big into pop. I have no shame. She
Yeah,
does some
no
incredible
shame.
stuff.
Yeah, that record hits.
Yeah, Chapel Roan is another one I really dig.
Oh yeah,
in that
yeah.
realm.
I gotta thank my wife for that. She's definitely exposed me to all of the Chaperone glory. That also, I love the fact that there's an artist out there just being like
Honest.
and yeah, there's boundaries. Like this, I don't know. Fandom has become such a fascinating thing. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I saw that story where she was like, "Look, you don't just because you know my music doesn't give you a right to come up to me at a fucking Starbucks and yell at me or something." And
Right, exactly. I mean, that's why, there in none of our conquest to put our art out there is there really an element of wanting to be famous. Quite the opposite. So, be it playing metal. I took stock one day. I'm like, it's great. You can play metal until you're freaking 60, 70. And, you're not going to have that sort of notoriety as some of those other artists. So anyway, yeah, good for her.
yeah, you'll never be Taylor Swift.
No, thank God.
Not a lot of people in the metal world want to be that. Well, man, we've been on for a half hour. I don't know if you have other interviews that you need to get to or anything. I love the record. I love the band, man. I'm really excited to see you guys live eventually. I hope our audience picks this up and goes and checks you guys out. Do you want to like shout out your socials or anything like that? Or I mean,
follow us at Melted Bodies on Instagram, at Melted Bodies on Twitter. We are really bad at Facebook, but we realize that there is an audience there. So sorry, Facebook fans, we'll get better at that. TikTok, God, who's got the energy? Sorry for our TikTok followers that also follow Melted Bodies, but yeah, we're very active on Instagram and Twitter. I'm never going to call it anything else.
I'm with you.
Twitter is secondary. So come chat with us, talk with us. We respond.
When are you guys playing next? The release show?
Okay. I mean, I'm not sure if I'm the first one to say it, but it's going to be on the 9th of November. So it'll be coming up, and we will announce all the fun details around that for our next show in Los Angeles. And then, hopefully cities outside of LA might see a good amount of us in 2025. But all that stuff needs to be figured out and announced as well.
Well, the new record's called The Inevitable Fork. It's out October 18th, self-produced, self-released. Cheers on that.
Thank you.
So everyone needs to support these guys and get out and check this record out and catch them live. Follow them on Facebook, Instagram, all that good stuff. I'll tag you guys in the Facebook post, and that way when you do log in, you'll see it. So
perfect. Awesome. Thank you, Justin.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time, man. Come back through and talk to me again when you have some updates or some new news.
Will do, man. All right, you take care.
You as well.
Peace.
Keep it brutal, y'all. Melted Bodies. We'll see you next time.
Bye.